and we bring in the host of Ringside Report Radio. You can follow him on twitter.com/Dave Simon MMA. It's John Smith. No, Dave Simon. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well.
Good.
I'm well.
Good.
Just trying to watch a bit of the anger management preview in the background. Charlie Sheen's new show.
Yeah.
Happy to see him back on the air.
I haven't been entertained by Charlie Sheen since Major League One.
Wow.
It is what it is. What I mean, you know.
2.5 Men. You didn't like 2.5 Men?
No.
Come on.
No.
Bocan, 2.5 Men?
Not a big fan.
Wow.
It's okay if you like really broad humor.
Not a big fan of the show. Never got into it, though, unfortunately. It wasn't a show that I really enjoyed.
I don't watch sitcoms with laugh tracks. I just don't do it.
All right.
It's not done.
All right, well, I respect your choice, Dave.
Yeah, you better respect it.
All right, let's talk some MMA here.
Let's talk
UFC 150. Dave Simon, when you were a young guy watching UFC 1, did you ever think they'd get to UFC 150?
I don't know. Yes? No? I would say, I don't know, man. I didn't really think about the future of the sport. When the first one came out, I just thought, hey, this is cool. I wonder how this will go. I didn't know that they would keep numbering all the events. But I was happy to see UFC 150 last night. It was a strong card, a strong main event. Benson Henderson and Frankie Edgar, like we talked about a little bit earlier. Very good fight. They went 5 rounds. They fought.
Nice to see a 5-rounder.
Yeah, I mean, it's a championship fight. They went the distance. I would have preferred seeing a finish. I always like to see fights finish, but it went to the judge's decision, and it went a split decision for Benson Henderson, 48-47 on 2 judges' scorecards, 46-49 for Frankie Edgar on the other judge's scorecard. I had it 49-47 for Frankie Edgar. A very close fight. I thought Frankie won, but the judges felt otherwise. I thought Frankie won the first fight as well. The judges felt otherwise, gave it to Benson. Now 2 straight fights. Nate Diaz will be next for Benson Henderson, and we're expecting that fight to take place before the end of the year. And that fight is going to be awesome. Nate Diaz, he brings a different style than Frankie Edgar does. He brings a more confrontational style. He's going to bring the fight a lot more than Edgar or Henderson really did in that fight. Diaz is a guy that likes to push forward, likes to really push that pace. And now I can't wait to see Benson Henderson and Nate Diaz. I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight.
All right, and then obviously for Frankie Edgar, a guy who allegedly or by some accounts won both of those fights against Henderson. He's now on the outside looking in. We're wondering what's going to happen with him. If Diaz does indeed beat Henderson, does Edgar get a shot at Diaz?
Well, I don't think so. I think that, Frankie's going to have to fight one more time at the very least. He's going to have to fight somebody else. He'll probably beat that somebody else, and then we'll move on and see from there. But I don't think that Frankie Edgar will get the immediate title match. He's going to have to win another fight or 2. People are talking about Frankie Edgar moving down to 145 pounds to take on the featherweight champion Jose Aldo. There really is a shortage of opponents for Jose Aldo right now. People want to see Edgar go down there and challenge that guy who is seen as one of the best in the world pound for pound. But I think Frankie Edgar wants to stay at 155. He showed last night that, look, he's one of the best 155ers in the world. I have him ranked number 2 in the world, right behind Benson Henderson, another very close fight. Frankie was beating pretty much everybody else at 155, so I think a couple more fights at lightweight, and he could be in line for another title shot. I think his path to a title shot would be faster at featherweight. He could probably fight once at 145.
Is he fast enough at featherweight?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the question. He'd be a bigger featherweight, but he's a very small lightweight who really doesn't cut a lot of weight to make 155. He's a very fast lightweight, and he's expressed that he wants to stay at lightweight, and you can't really argue with that. The guy's been a world champion, and he, by my opinion, should still be world champion based off the fight last night. A very, very close fight to call. You can't say anything about the judges. You can say you disagree, but you can't really call them morons or idiots or anything like that because it was a close fight to call, and I could see how they would call it for Benson Henderson. I thought Frankie won the fight, and I think Frankie should continue fighting at 155. I think he's still top 2 in the world.
Chatting with Dave Simon of Ringside Report Radio, talking about UFC 150, which went down this past weekend. Dave, other fights on that card that were maybe the highlights? And again, we're talking about this fight mainly because of the quote-unquote controversial decision, but were there any better fights on the card?
I mean, there were some good fights on this card. Donald Cerrone and Melvin Gillard had a pretty good fight. It lasted only 1 minute and 16 seconds, but it was an awesome 1 minute and 16 seconds. Cerrone got caught with a big kick, a big punch, and he was looking like he was in trouble early on in the fight, but he managed to come back and get the knockout victory over Melvin Gillard, these two former training partners. That was a co-main event. That was a pretty good fight. We also saw Dennis Bermudez get a very nice victory, a knockout win there a submission win in the first round for Bermudez over Tommy Hayden. Yushin Okami, I think, had a real nice performance. This is a guy who hadn't won since 2010.
Wow.
He finally got a victory last night over Buddy Roberts.
Is it a credible victory?
Not really. I mean, Buddy Roberts is not the guy that Yushin was supposed to fight. He was supposed to fight Husimar Palhares. Palhares had an injury, so this guy Roberts stepped in. Roberts was 1-0 in the UFC, and Okami going into this fight was 10-4. So the experience definitely different, but Okami was coming off a loss to Anderson Silva.
Which is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah,
obviously.
right, but he was coming off a couple losses, losing to Anderson Silva, then losing to Tim Boetsch in his last fight, which was especially heartbreaking for him. It was in his home country of Japan in February, so now getting back on the winning track. I think it was a big win for Yushin Okami, and also Jake Shields. Not a very impressive fight, but he won a unanimous decision over Ed Herman. It was Shields' first fight in the UFC at 185 pounds. He's a former middleweight champion over in Strikeforce, actually beat Dan Henderson at middleweight. Came into the UFC, looked all right against Martin Kampmann, earned a title shot against GSP, didn't look great there. Then lost another fight to Jake Ellenberger and got knocked out. He then beat Akiyama at 170 and looked okay, but now moving up to 185, I think he'll have more success. And not the most impressive fight last night, but Jake Shields is kind of his style, kind of a boring wrestler, hold you down style, and
he's
what we saw.
He's a guy that the UFC certainly needed to win a fight here to continue to be a name at least, or a credible opponent maybe for some of the other guys maybe that the promotion was pushing. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think that you now have more fights you can do with Jake Shields because he won. If he would have lost this fight, you look at him and say, okay, well, if you can't beat Ed Herman, I don't know where you really stack up at middleweight.
Processes of elimination, he's down the totem pole then.
Yeah, he would definitely drop down quite a bit. He was on a main pay-per-view card last night. A loss last night, I think, would have taken him off pay-per-view or something like that, would have taken him out of the big scene. But a win, I think, moves him up the ranks. I wouldn't mind seeing Shields fight Okami next. Both middleweights victorious last night. That'd be a pretty interesting fight and a big money fight as well.